What's up, everybody? It's me, John Caspian, and we're going to talk about the big differences between Kill Team and 8th edition. I was able to get my eyeballs on the rulebook for Kill Team, so I was able to read through a whole bunch. Spent the last couple hours taking some notes, feeling out the differences. I also watched some battle reports, by the way. Guerrilla Games, Ash Barker, he's awesome. He did a couple of battle reports already, and I highly recommend watching those to get a feel for the game and how they do things. A lot of the stuff is the same from 8th edition to Kill Team. So wound rolls, shooting in general, line of sight, stuff like that. They do a couple of clarifications. For instance, they say like a gun sticking out isn't really shooting the target. You really have his main body and then maybe a head. And they said to clarify with your opponent on that, but I have a feeling they're going to need to FAQ that to be a little more consistent, especially if you want to do things in tournaments. So that's one thing to think about when you're doing line of sight. Can your model see the body of your enemy? But I have this little list. Bam! Here we go. So let's start off with number one, movement. So movement is a little bit different. You've probably heard it's you go, I go for movement, but they've added one extra element or change, which is charges are now done in the movement phase. So you have models that you move regularly, and then you have your models that you advance, and then you have models that you ready, which is where they don't move at all, which we'll talk about in a second. And then finally you have models that charge. So when you have models that charge, you get to do the usual charge that you do in 8th edition with the change of you can actually move up to whatever number you rolled. Now, interestingly enough, you don't have to if you don't want to, but it's an option. If you chose to charge, whether or not you were successful, you can't shoot in the shooting phase. So the big restriction for that, and it's weird that they chose the word can instead of must, so I guess that makes sense. I haven't played yet, so I'll let you know after about 5 or 6 games if the charge thing should be a must, stay a can, we'll see. But basically, you can, let's say your enemy is 9 inches away, you charge 7, so you can't end within an inch of them successfully charge. You can still move up to 7 inches as long as you're directly toward your the dude you charged at. So you couldn't say charge 7 inches and then move, you know, somewhere else. It's got to be right to the guy that you charged, and that's cool. So I like that. And then the ready action basically lets you shoot first in the shooting phase. So you've got your heavy bolter. It makes sense for him to kind of buckle down and get ready for letting loose some fire compared to people who just move regularly. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, so that's the movement phase. Everything's all tacked in together. This is the only element that is you go, I go. The rest of it's alternating. And then it's pretty simple. You know, I move all my dudes, and you move all your dudes. Oh, let's go ahead and talk about climbing and falling. It's in the advanced rules, so you don't have to use it right away, but you might as well. If you're going to climb, you can climb walls, A-okay. So any kind of wall surface is okay to climb, as long as you have the movement to be able to end your model like on top of the wall, on the surface on top of it, that's A-okay. You can't just like jump up on a ledge that's 5 inches up and then kind of get on top of it. Give you an example. Ledge right here, the wall's way over here, like that. I can't just jump up here like that. So they said it has to be, the ledge that you get up on has to be within an inch of a wall that you can climb. So it's basically climbing up and then vaulting over the lip. So that's one restriction on climbing. You can't just kind of magically go up unless you have fly. So I don't know if anything has fly in the base rulebook right now, but they included fly rules for future expansions and units that can do that. So that's pretty cool. Looking forward to Raptors from Chaos Space Marines. That's exciting. Falling, if you're within an inch of an edge of a building or anything like that, you can risk falling if you take shots or if you get in combat with somebody, which is a pretty cool thing. I like that. If you get like a roll of a 1, then you ought like fall down, and then you can take falling damage on top of that, so you literally can fall to your death, which is pretty darn cool. So I like the idea that you could charge somebody, you know, you kind of vault up, run at them, and then push them over an edge. Very cool, Kill Team, very cool. Let's move on. Do I have anything in the second phase? I'll go ahead and jump back. So there's a scouting phase in the pre-game. So before anyone's deployed, you know, you've picked your mission, and you can do what's called a scouting phase, and there's 6 choices that you basically secretly choose and then reveal at the same time. They didn't have, I think they should have had like cards that you pick, but I guess you could do dice instead. So put your dice down, hold it above, and then reveal at the same time. And each one of these allows 20% of your force to do a certain action. So one of them is to forward deploy, which means you deploy 6 inches forward from your deployment zone. The one right after that basically allows you to fire with your models at any forward deploying models. So basically, some of the more powerful scouting options can literally be countered with other options. And what's weird though, and I'm not sure how I feel about this, is that some of the options are like only counters. So if they don't choose like the forward deploy, my shooting thing does nothing at all, which is weird. I feel like they could have designed it to where no matter what, your scouting option does something. It just happens to counter another thing, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, they play tested it. I didn't, so you know, I give that to them. But still, I would like to know. I'd like to know that. That'd be nice. Let's see. What's next? Unmodified hits for 6. So no matter what, you hit on a 6, which is really useful for things like orcs, or grots, or cultists. Any models that just kind of suck in general for shooting. No matter what, and there's a lot of different negative modifiers to hitting, such as being obscured, being broken, etc. Like if the shooting guy is broken, then those things basically cause you to not hit as well. But no matter what, you can hit on 6, so there's always a chance. Luckily for my orcs, I got lots of DACA, which is great. The other thing that you can do is split fire. So you can choose multiple models that are within 2 inches of each other, and then choose which ones get applied. So let's say you have Heavy 3 for the Def Gun for the orcs. Then you get to choose your main model, and then he has 2 dudes that are near him, so 1 on each of those models as well. So 3 shots, 3 different models. This is pretty useful for horde type armies. Like grots are 3 points each, so you can take 10 of them pretty quickly and easily. Heck, you could take 20 of them a-okay and be fine. And so that's sort of helpful for, you know, being able to split that up compared to like shooting at units. So since there aren't any units, you're only shooting at individual models. So tactically, this may be something to think about, how you spread out your guys. So there are bonuses, like bubbles for auras and whatnot, that are sometimes within 2 inches, 3 inches. A lot of the tactics and command point stuff is within a couple of inches as well. So there's advantages to being close to each other, and also disadvantages of being able to be shot at each other. So that's cool. Let's see. I talked about being ready, charge moving. In order to successfully, later on in the fight phase, you get to pile in. But in order to successfully charge, you have to end your move within an inch of one of your chosen charge targets. So that's good to know. Crossing that one off. Let's go on to shooting phase. Talked about scouting. When someone charges you and you haven't moved, so let's say you're a heavy bolter and someone charges you and, I don't know, they're 9 inches away, you can choose to retreat and move 3 inches away from them, which is very interesting tactically. Or behind a wall, I think you could choose that as well. I don't think it has to be directly away from them. You just have to move your 3 inches further away from them. So tactically, that could be very useful. So you know, someone says, I declare my charge against your heavy bolter, and you say, I'm going to retreat behind this wall. You could still charge him, but you might get yourself into more trouble. So very cool. Retreat only if you haven't moved in the movement phase. So if you're heavy bolter readied, it's good to go. Got climbing, falling, all the morale stuff is later. Yeah, shooting. All that's pretty simple. If your enemy is obscured, any part of the body, not like gun, but any part of the body is obscured, then you get a -1 to hit. And there's other things that can modify that up and down, but for the most part, you're just going to encounter negative modifiers like long range. If you're over half of the distance of your weapon, it's long range. That's it. So that's good. Split fire done. Unmodified 6. Flesh wounds. So flesh wounds are a little bit something just different. You don't just get destroyed if you get a wound. So I shoot you with my death gun, and you know I hit on 3s. Sorry, hit on 5s, wound on 3s maybe. So if I do one hit that does 3 damage to you, then you actually roll multiple dice and take the highest one in terms of if you die or if you just have a flesh wound. So let's say you shoot at a grot with a late lasgun, and you do d6 damage and you do roll a 5 for your damage. Then I literally have to roll 5 dice and take the highest one for that wound roll. You only roll 1 time for the wound roll, which is something interesting. It's not 6 wound rolls. It's, you know, it's 6 dice and pick the highest one for your wound roll. Now, if you have a model that has more health, let's say an Aberrant for the Genestealer cults, which has 2 wounds, you know, the lasgun acts as normal for 8th edition, so it would take down your wounds to 0. Then you roll to see if you die or if you just take a flesh wound.